I just logged picture on my latest film, a German crime thriller directed by Udo Flohr.
Legally, Bremen was still living in the age of the Inquisition.
Bitte.
Trials were not public.
Herr Doktor?
Ruhe bitte!
The picture was shot in Germany.
Bitte!
I cut it here in LA. We're gonna make this happen. Just needs to be tighter. The score was recorded in Prague. The mix was done in Germany and the final color correction happens in the Netherlands.
Hat sie das geschmiert? Hat sie das geschmiert?
Truly a global collaboration. And I think it's becoming the new norm, even for indie films.
Männer und Kinder sind ja abgestorben. Wie viele sind es denn?
Mindestens 10.
This is by no means a big studio production. Yet, thanks to technology, it can pull together an international pool of talent, from the director of photography, the composer, and all the other key crew positions. I invited Udo, a first-time director by the way, to tell us how he made it happen.
I started with the Effigy project about 3 years ago, and this is my first feature. One thing that I did is that I didn't really do any shorts before I did this feature, so I've done some exercises and so on, but I've not really done any proper shorts before embarking on this mission. Mostly the reason is there's no market for shorts, and I don't think necessarily the feature is going to be 9 or 10 times more expensive than the short.
Yeah, I did the same. My first directing effort was also a feature.
How's he handling it?
But I do think there is some merit to making a short first, or a couple.
Absolutely.
Because as a first-time director, obviously, I made so many mistakes and I haven't figured things out as much. So you're kind of learning as you're already presenting yourself as a filmmaker and you're exposing yourself. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, just like a quick synopsis of the film. What is the film about?
So the film is based on a true story, and it's about a serial killer who was identified and sentenced about 200 years ago in a northern German city called Bremen. About 200 years ago, this woman, her name was Gesche Gottfried, and she was identified and eventually sentenced for killing 15 people, including her 3 children, her parents, her twin brother, and 3 husbands.
Sollte das Gericht das nicht mal gründlich untersuchen?
It's not a docudrama by any means. We did try to tell an interesting story, and of course you had a very important part in that. During the edit we were able to redefine the story structure to some extent.
Yeah. Let's talk about this process of editing. What were the steps of getting to this cut, if you could describe like the different rounds of edits?
There are 3 steps in editing. The first step should actually be that you work on your assembled cut, you do a first rough cut. You try to build the film pretty much as it was intended during the shoot, and it was intended during the writing of the screenplay. I did that with Andreas Farr, who is our assistant editor, and he already started doing that during the shoot. So every day he was sitting in the digital image technician's room, which is another job that he did during the shoot, and he started editing scenes already, which helped us make sure that the scenes we had already shot were okay and usable. And then together with him I did the first rough cut. The reason to do that is that you get this rough cut because you need to get it out of your head. So to some extent during a rough cut you realize that some things don't work.
20 Jahre als Hausarzt. Kann doch nicht angehen, dass Sie nie was bemerkt haben.
I'm actually going to have to reshuffle this scene, figure out a different layout or different blocking than what was originally shot, and I'm going to explain why.
I think the second part is that we talked a lot about some general guidelines, basically what my intention was with this film. You occasionally showed me stuff, but mostly you also started implementing your own idea of what the story structure could be.
The director gave me just some initial notes right here. He was actually flying over from Germany. Then he came here, we watched the film together, and he gave me some more notes. This balance between the editor's cut and the director's cut, that can be a really scary situation when you do it for the first time, like the relationship between the director and the editor, because you have to figure out how much freedom should I take and how much do I need to include the director in the process.
Ihr erster Mann starb 1813
And it really was helpful to have that rough cut that was very faithful to the script at the beginning. I think you were able to just sort of let me do my thing for a while and not worry about it, because you had this other cut where you could always say, well, I really liked it the way it was over there.
Yeah,
Why don't we
basically I
take
always had
another
a fallback.
And there were a couple of moments that we discovered now in the final phase where we spent 3 days going over scene by scene by scene, where Udo said, well, take a look at the old cut. And there were shots that at the moment it didn't resonate with me and that we brought back into the scene. So that was great.
Offen? Wenn du groß bist, dann fährt sowas auch in Bremen.
Can you talk a little bit more in detail what we did in the last 3 days? How did that work? Like, what was our sort of process?
The intention was that we would watch the film first, take some notes, and then start working on those notes. And what happened actually is that you immediately started going in and make changes, which ended up becoming our MO. We found out that we were not able to sit still and watch the film and take notes. So
because it was like so minutiae stuff, like add a couple frames here, make this moment, give it breath or take breath away. And so these are the little things that's very hard to like write down.
Sometimes I felt like I was nitpicking, like I shouldn't be on your case about it so much, but at the same time we always felt rewarded because we realized even if you made a very minute change, that it still helped. Sometimes there's some suspense where you can actually stretch time a little to keep the suspense, and then at other times you want to speed it up because otherwise it could start to get a boring moment and so on.
Did you find yourself in a situation on this film where you think like nothing that we tried worked?
I don't think in this film that really happened, but it certainly could happen on a film. I mean, there are 1 or 2 aspects here where we said it might be good to reshoot some pickups. I think you found solutions for everything where we could pretty much use this cut.
Herr Senator, Müller ist nicht befähigt, bei der Exhumierung Protokoll zu führen.
Yeah, I think you are in a situation where you hired the right people. I think you had an amazing DP on the film that just made the
Kist.
film look incredible. And he actually has an approach to shooting that I'm now a total fan of, which is multi-camera, like embracing multi-camera as a way of shooting scenes in a way that you can really get the most of it. You always think like if you have several cameras running at the same time, you're compromising because you can't find the perfect angle. You might not be able to light it perfectly for that single shot, but he takes it as a creative challenge to make that work.
There's some advantages in my view to shooting with 3 cameras. The most important one is that the actors like it, because if you have a multi-camera situation, then everything always counts. You don't do a different setup for the reaction shot, but the reaction shot is actually being filmed in the same, being acquired in the camera in the same scene.
So they're always on. They feel like everything they give to the project matters.
Yeah, so the actors really like working that way. It helps with editing a little. You can probably talk about that. It helps with continuity a little, and it also helps save some money. And the big disadvantage that most people see is that it's not really possible to have optimal lighting for all 3 cameras. I think this is where Thomas Kist comes in, because before I even contacted him, he was actually famous for having worked on feature films with 3 cameras.
I'm sorry, I have not seen any of your films.
I think we'll just get the check, please.
So one of his films, that's probably the best known one that he did that way, is Interview with Steve Buscemi and Sienna Miller.
Watch it!
Another one is Blind Date with Stanley Tucci.
May I make an observation?
Certainly.
You seem to have nice breasts. When did you get them?
When I started my period, I got ice cream and tits.
Yeah, so my thought was you hired very talented people, actors, production design, amazing. I mean, the people there, they actually had a TV special on the making of the building that this is shot.
We used one large manor house that they bought, and then they renovated it, and the production designers, their names are Christina von Ahlefeldt and Knut Splett-Henning. So they bought the manor house, which is a big manor house with many rooms. We ended up building 17 sets, I think, or 16 sets in that one building. and that building stands in for 3 different buildings in the film. For example, they changed the windows, and they even put different windows in that part of the manor house, which is all the same building, but they put different windows in different parts of the house to make sure that it didn't look like the same building, because one was supposed to be the courthouse, and the other one was supposed to be the private house where the murderer lived, and so on. So if you look up, it's by the German TV station NDR. If you look up an NDR episode called Nord Story, and it's Happy End im Herrenhaus, and there you can watch the whole thing.
Sofort einer! Der Rumpf ist vergiftet!
So I want to bring it back to editing. It is storytelling, and it's like these moments, these shots, they're really building blocks, and you can't just document a performance that happened in front of a camera and say, okay, that's edit. I just documented what they shot. You have to take that, and each setup is a building block, and you have to say, what is the story?
And now I'm gonna get a little crafty. They're already gonna be here over at this table. Before I commit, let's see the other take.
How can we make the story work? How can we engage the audience? How can we solve certain problems that may be in the script? Because sometimes when you write the script, you put everything in there because you don't know whether the audience is going to understand it or not. And then when you shoot it and you edit it, you realize, oh, it's so on the nose. It's like so obvious what's going on because the actors are bringing subtext to every line. The audience is ahead of us in the story. We need to pull back. We need to keep it more of a mystery.
Ich habe Gott eine Chance gegeben.
How does that feel to you when you see scenes that you worked on in the script phase for so long and you sort of thought, yes, this is working. And then when you shot it, sort of kind of becomes a little bit of a discovery again. And then when you see it in the editing.
Yeah, it does happen that stuff just falls flat, that you had this great idea during the screenplay. It doesn't turn out like that at all. And during the edit, you came up, or often you came up with a different idea, and suddenly there is a solution where the intention is realized, but in a way that I, as a director, never thought of, neither during the work on the screenplay phase nor during the shoot.
I hope I'm gonna get away with it, because the way that I cut it now, they're kind of looking at a different body. And that might be a problem. I'm gonna find out down the road.
Johann Moses. Meiner Meinung nach Nervenfieber.
Frau Gottfried hat ihn bis zum Tode gepflegt.
20 Jahre als Hausarzt. Kann doch nicht angehen, dass Sie nie was bemerkt haben.
You had a couple of times where, like, what if we cut it this way? What if we try this? And then you already almost said, you know what, it's not worth our time. To make that extra step and say, no, let's take some time and explore that idea. And many times we actually took those ideas and...
Many times we took them. There were like 2 or 3 times where I led you down the garden path, so to speak.
There were 2 moments where we like spent maybe half hour, an hour, and then just said, okay, we tried it doesn't work. Yeah. Giving the director the permission to see that then builds goodwill, where it doesn't feel like I'm trying to like be overbearingly put my ideas into the film. So that whenever there is a moment where we have a strong disagreement creatively, we're at a point where we can then talk about it and say, okay, I feel like this is important, you feel like this is important, let's hash it out. And we don't have to make it about who's in charge at that moment. Because ultimately the director is in charge. So once I present my idea and say, this is what I think, and the director says, I thought about it, I don't think this is what I want to do, let's go the other way, then I just have to shut up and be okay with it.
Wer hat den Sarg schließen lassen?
Frau Gottfried. Die Leiche sei kurz vorm Platzen gewesen.
Do you make decisions for the film based solely on what you like or on what you believe the audience will prefer?
I do think about the audience. I guess I don't believe in art for art's sake that much. You know, it's a little bit of both. So you do have to have an artistic vision. If you keep, worrying about the audience all the time, then the film will not have your own creative mark on it.
And for me as an editor, I'm all about the audience. If I feel I can connect the audience, if I can find that thing that I envision in a scene and I sit in an audience and it actually works, like they are laughing, they're crying, they're gasping, they're quiet. For me personally, that's almost more important than actually what I'm making. Does it work? Does it connect?
Yeah, editing, it really is the invisible art, isn't it?
Great. I have one more question for you. You went from not making a film to becoming a filmmaker. How did you get to that point? Like, how did you pull it off? Like, how did you get the money, get all the people to actually believe in it, and then made it happen?
One strategy that worked really well, there was a point when I started telling everybody that this project was really happening. Told them that it was like a moving train, it was happening, I was gonna make the film no matter what, with or without them, but they could be part of it. For me, this worked for investors, this worked for talent, this worked for creative people like even yourself to some extent, where you are too experienced to fall for this in some way, because you told me that when we first met you weren't sure that it was really happening.
FOMO, fear of missing out. If you don't say yes, you're not gonna be part of it. You're gonna feel bad about not taking action 2 years from now, or 1 year, when that film comes out.
In the end, it comes down to there's many people who talk about making a film and they never do it. If you look at this situation, you can pin it down to they just didn't do it. They had this attitude where they wanted all the pieces to fall into place before they got to the point where they said this is happening. I think in the end it comes down to, if life hands you lemons as a filmmaker, you have to be willing to eat the lemon. Some people can't even watch somebody else eat a lemon, but if you want to make a film, you have to make sure that not only can you see somebody else eat a lemon, but you have to be able, if life hands you lemons, to eat it. Are you able to watch that?
Yeah, I am. I'll take half a piece.
You made films before I even met you.
Okay, we're filmmakers. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
So if you want to become a filmmaker, get a lemon, eat it in its entirety, and then you're ready. Udo, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for actually showing the process and me maybe saying, okay, this doesn't work, so I'm going to go over here. And that requires him to be okay with it. So I want to thank you for that.
If you want to get a deeper understanding of how I completely transformed a key scene in the film, you can watch a free editing session by clicking the link in the video description. I think I solved it. I solved the puzzle in the rough. If you happen to be in LA, catch Udo and I when we present the online collaborative workflow of the various post departments at this month's Creative Pro user group in Hollywood. Info also in the description. Thanks for watching.